It's time for episode 249 of the 3 Point Podcast, presented by Memorial Healthcare and Skymint Cannabis. Memorial Healthcare's now Community Wellness Center is an incredible addition to our community. You still have time to join the 21-day health challenge all the way up to January 15th to sign up for that. Just $1 initiation fee, $2 a day. Hey, that's less than $50 out of your pocket for this challenge. Includes all kinds of benefits. Drop-in childcare available for $2 per child for 2 hours. And after you sign up, or after you try the 21-day challenge, you get a 75% off your sign-up fee. Just a great deal. Memorial Healthcare, providing care for you since 1921. Skymint Cannabis, they're Michigan's leader in the industry. Over 15 locations throughout the state of Michigan. Check out the new Skymint Reserve. If you're over 21, go online at skymint.com, sign up for their rewards program. Skymint, your one-stop shop for pain relief, help sleeping, or just chilling out. And use that coupon code at the Corona store, 3.20 for 20% off Skymint products for new customers. Also want to thank our local partners. They include AZEE Printing Solutions, Crow Real Estate and Auction, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Capital Sports Fieldhouse, Nelson House Funeral Homes, and Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. You know, fellas, we always try to start the podcast with a little catch up. My goodness, we took a week off. How badly did we want to get on microphone and talk about what in the hell is going on in the sports world, huh?
Yeah, it's always good to take a minute or a week in this case to recharge a little bit. You know, vacations are always good. Step away. I think one thing, I feel like we've had some guests tell us that they're always, not to pat ourselves on the back, but they've been impressed at how consistent we've been for almost 250 episodes every week. Like you've said before, Ted, you know, even with our full-time work schedules, you know, families, kids, you know, whatever else we have going on, we always find a time to fit this thing in. But it is always nice to step away and, you know, kind of recharge, I guess. But man, it's almost like we picked a bad week to do it because there was so much going on. So again, good to step away, you know, like just kind of disconnect for a minute, but man, we got a lot to kind of catch up on.
Well, we'll get into all the sports stuff for sure, but I did want to pose a question to you right out of the get-go here. You know, you came back to Michigan, you had a lot of great family time for a week, however long you were up here after the Christmas Day holiday. Every time you do it, is it more and more like, man, even though we got great weather down in Carolina, I sure do like Michigan. I mean, what are your thoughts on that today?
Same as I've probably said before when we were sitting on your pontoon last summer, as we're sitting in Memorial's state-of-the-art podcast studio last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever. Yeah, every time we're driving back from our trip to Michigan, you know, we start saying, how much closer are we to saying, yeah, it's time to move back? Mm-hmm. Same thing I always say, it's the job situation. If we could find 2 ideal jobs, which is it's possible, it's not impossible, then we'd be there in a heartbeat because it is cool. I mean, the podcast, it'd be awesome to do in-person podcasts every week. Or I know, Jared, you're not local, but you know, as
every other week,
right? More in-person podcasts, but the family stuff and friends, you know, we had Wesley's, my son's first birthday party, bunch of friends and family were there. You know, that's not necessarily something we can do down here. We hung out with some friends on New Year's and, you know, we did the cross. So all the stuff we did, you know, you just start having those conversations of like, while we like it down here in Charlotte in North Carolina, it's just not the same as home. You know, there's just something about home. And Jared, you know, you're not in Corona anymore, but you know, you're close enough that you can head back home if you need to or whatever.
Yeah. Perfect distance, as I would say. I'll just jump right into my catch up. It's kind of weird. It's depressing, but it is what it is, I guess. This Christmas, for whatever reason, I kind of came to the realization that
oh God,
Christmas
here comes the Grinch.
It isn't what it used to be, you know, when I was a kid. I think I've kind of really sort of finally kind of grown up into an adult. This year was the first year we did not open presents on Christmas Day. This was also the first year both my brothers were not there on Christmas Day. And so it was just a little bit like I'm an adult now. And there was no, you know, getting ready for Santa. I already knew what my present was. Nice new TV, which I can't wait to watch the Lions and Packers on later tonight. But it just felt like the magic was gone. And it was a depressing night. Still a great day. I mean, Christmas is still the best day of the year, but it's gone in the blink of an eye. And that was my maybe takeaway from this holiday season was I'm an adult now. It's time to grow up and there's no more Santa Claus.
There is that funny window, and Ted, you definitely remember where you have that transition. Jared, I don't know what your plans are with your relationship status and all that kind of stuff, but you go from the magic of the kid and everyone's home and stuff, and then even like with your friends, a bunch of friends are away working, and your brothers weren't even there, so it is different. But then if you transition into, if you do decide to have kids or whatever, and now Ted with grandkids, that's where like the Christmas magic does come back. But there is that weird window, maybe in your 20s, early 20s, where it is kind of like, you got a new TV. It's like, just, can I get my presents and let's just watch some NBA.
TV's too big; it doesn't fit in my car. So it's like for like a week, I was just like sitting in the box at my parents' house. Still finally got it up here, so I couldn't even really enjoy it. It was just like staring at a box all day.
It's there now, though.
Yes, it's all set up. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Now you do talk about that window, and I agree with what Matt's saying. You go from being a young kid to being Jared's age, and then you kind of segue that into, you have a girlfriend now, Jared, but eventually you're going to become a married man, and then that'll bring Christmas to a different light. And then once there's kids involved, then it's all back to 100% Christmas. So I was going to ask you a question, though. You said Christmas is still your favorite holiday. Do you still feel that, or does Thanksgiving slide up the ladder?
No. Christmas, people who say that Christmas isn't their favorite holiday they just want to be contrarian. It doesn't make sense. It's the best day. How can you compete with giving away gifts and getting gifts, and you have basically the same food spread as Thanksgiving usually. You get to see all your family. You watch NBA basketball all day. I mean, Thanksgiving is often awesome because of the Lions, but no, Christmas is still the best day. The only thing is the weather. Obviously maybe a 4th of July or something like that can maybe compete with it if you're a big like boat or cabin family, but I don't understand how people don't love Christmas as number one.
Okay. Well, you kind of segued a little bit from your brothers not being around, and your entire family wasn't there, so it was a little bit of a downer Christmas compared to others, but still high on the ladder.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just like, just my life is depressing. I guess that's what that means. I don't know. I mean,
they join me, brother. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Hey, I'll say this too. You work in an industry that you're lucky to have Christmas off,
right?
Because if the Pistons ever happen to play on, or the Red Wings, play on Christmas Day, you might end up having to work. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head. I probably about half the time I've been at ESPN, I've had Christmas off, and then other ones, you have to work because now there's a full slate of NBA, kind of like, on Thanksgiving, there's all these NFL and a couple college football games on Thanksgiving. Someone has to work those, and you work in the industry that if the Pistons are playing or, whatever,
right,
you might have to work. So
yeah, both the Red Wings and the Pistons were playing on Christmas or on New Year's Eve, excuse me. I don't know how it was a miracle I didn't get scheduled. I wish I would have been scheduled at this point. Would have got my mind off of that game. Yeah. It cracks me up working on holidays. There's one funny one I remember. Real quick segue. So Thanksgiving Day, like my first year out of college, I was working at Meyer Electronics, and I remember I was super mad. I had to work on Thanksgiving. Like, do you really need people to? Why are we even open on Thanksgiving? You really need me to come open in on Thanksgiving? So I get there, and literally, like, I pull in. There's maybe like 3 cars in the parking lot. So I'm like snickering to myself as I walk in. Why in God's green earth am I even here right now? I remember doing like a 360 like Snapchat video, sent it to my friends. Why the heck am I even here? This place is dead. Oh, give it about 2 or 3 hours. Once everybody was done eating Thanksgiving dinner, it was the most packed I've ever seen a store. And everyone was coming to the electronics for like the Black Friday sales. So no, I shouldn't complain. I had it off. So it could always be worse.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all had a great holiday, especially Christmas. We would have had a happier New Year if we would have maybe had a little bit better success New Year's Eve evening. Yeah. We'll talk about that coming up. But here in this catch-up portion of the program, let's talk a little bit here, local sports, the Prep Spotlight presented by Capital Sports Fieldhouse. And I'll tell you a little bit about that right after this. Okay, I don't know, Matt, did you get a chance when you were in town at all to check out the Fieldhouse?
I didn't. I drove by and, could kind of see the improvements, and there's actually quite a bit of construction and stuff going on downtown Owosso. Yeah, I know there were some some fires and stuff that
Lulu's.
happened or whatever. But it just seemed like there's a lot of construction and stuff going on downtown Owosso. But
Yeah, well, next time you're in town, we'll go in there and grab some lunch and give you the full tour, because it's just a great facility, and they're the sponsor for this segment. Well, we'll start in high school boys basketball. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. New Lothrop 6'5" senior guard Ty Coleman had another plus 40-point game. He put up 42 in a 66-45 win over Byron last Friday night. Right now, guys, I'm a little bit closer to what's going on in Shiawassee County basketball, but it's probably a two-man race for Mr. Basketball here in Shiawassee County. Langsburg's Xander Woodruff had 30 in the Wolfpack's 76-21 win over Lakeview, and he's averaging probably 28 a game. So it's a pretty tight contest.
Why don't you create a Ted Fattel 3-point podcast, Mr. Basketball of Shiawassee County, that you award at the end of every basketball season?
I'll tell you what, it doesn't have to be a Ted Fattel 3-point podcast. It can be a 3-point podcast, Mr. Basketball. How's that?
Yeah, cool.
I don't need the glory.
That would be cool.
I think we'll do it. How's that sound?
Why not? Yeah.
Mr. Basketball and Miss Basketball.
Have you had a chance to watch New Lothrop? What is there? Is it just like this guy is just a one-man James Harden show, or what is the
I
deal?
haven't had a chance to see him personally yet. We have a game coming up on our schedule. I think New Lothrop and Ovid Elsie, which should be a pretty good matchup. But yeah, he's a 6'5" guard that can fill it up. He had, I think he had another 7 3-pointers in that game, man. And Woodruff, I mean, he tortured Corunna, and he was the MVP of that Corunna Shiawassee shootout. He's the real deal for Langsburg, and they're unbeaten at 8-0. So there's some good things going on in our county, especially between those two programs.
That is cool to see.
Yeah. Now, not so good. Let me just jump right here and jump into the press release. Owosso High School's varsity basketball program changed their coaching leadership on January 4th. When Coach Dave Williams resigned, the OHS athletic department moved quickly to stabilize the program. I caught wind of it before they made the announcement who was going to take his place. And to me, the obvious choice was Dave Owens, the longtime coach of Owosso. And he was indeed named the interim coach, at least for the rest of this year. We're talking about the good programs that are having all kinds of success. Owosso has really been in a down mode the last 4 years or so. And, David Williams came in with a pretty impressive resume, but apparently the losing got to him, and they made a change. He resigned, and sad deal.
I don't know if Jim Harbaugh could turn that whoever does turn that program around. It should be the coach of the year. Whenever that does happen, I don't know. Might be next year, might be 5 years. Maybe Coach Owens will spin it around this year. But it's a hard program, and I don't know. I mean, coaching is it's a hard profession to get into, and it's hard. It's definitely a lot harder when you're losing every game.
And, there's some areas that, Owosso has had stretches where their basketball program's been good. Obviously, even like Corunna's been up and down, they seem to be on the uptick right now. So it's almost like, I don't know him personally, so this is just my opinion or whatever, my thoughts. But like, sometimes it's almost like maybe you almost have to have that perspective coming into the job. Like you're not walking into the best program in the state of Michigan. It's going to be a rebuild. It's probably going to take a couple years to kind of turn it around. Like Corunna's coach right now, I know they weren't necessarily terrible, but it took them a couple of years to kind of turn things around. And it seemed like he stayed the course and kind of kept building that program. So I think the big thing, like with programs like that, is all of that, keeping at it, trying to keep building your program. But then, like, if the kids don't like you, and again, I don't know if that's the case. I'm just, saying, like, if you can keep the program together, and at least if the kids can be having fun, enjoying playing with each other, enjoying playing for you, then that says something. Because even if you, go 8-12 and you're not a very good team, if you're having fun and the kids like you, then, you can keep building the program. But if that's not the case, then it makes it a really tough time for the kids and the coaches.
The Trojans right now would take an 8-12 season and think that's a huge improvement, which it would be. They're in a tough spot right now. And just my viewpoint, and Dave Owens has the experience. He's going to at least communicate to the kids the rest of the season, work on fundamentals to try and improve things, work with the lower levels to make sure they're heading in the right direction. But, it starts with, they got to make the right hire. They got to get a guy that's dedicated to spend the time. You guys know how important it is to when you're a youngster playing in the youth program, what they call it at Corona, little calves, and the head varsity basketball coach, he runs that program. He might not be there every minute of every game and practice, but he's the guy running the show. He's watching these young kids come up through the program. He's offering his input when he can. He has to hire the right youth coaches. He can't hire the next Bobby Knight trying to coach fifth graders. He's got to have them, have the right attitude, and it doesn't happen overnight. It might not happen in a couple years, but if you get the right person involved, they can turn a program around, but it takes time and effort for sure.
And it takes community buy-in too. Like if the community isn't behind that hire in a small place like Owosso, Corona, Durand, places like that, it's not going to work either. So that's why, like you said, Dave Owens, the community likes him. So,
and he's a good guy.
That's a good gap fill, but they need to make the right hire after this.
Exactly. Jared, I know you laugh every time I bring it up when I had an 0-17 basketball season, but to kind of set the stage on that, when I was a sophomore, there were 2 seniors that got suspended for drinking on a New York trip, a class trip to New York. So they were suspended the rest of the year. So that opened up the door for me to get playing time, right? And also my buddy Chris McMillan to get playing time. But we did finish 0-17 that year. But our head coach, Roger Rathbun, was a longtime administrator at Corona. He was a really good guy, really good coach, but he kept us together enough. When we played St. Louis the very last game of the year. They were the conference champions. We went to St. Louis and we ended up losing by 2 points on a last second shot by them. So, we stuck with it, and we became quite a bit better junior and my senior year. But that's the problem. When you have when you have no success, no wins, somehow that coach has to figure out to keep the team together, make it fun, maybe light. I don't know.
They don't make them like they used to, Ted. You're the golden generation. You're the greatest generation. Listen, I'm not far removed from high school. 5 years or 6 years at this point. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know if it's the social media age. I don't know if it's the new helicopter parent era. There is no, I feel like any coach, if you ask, it's just it's impossible to be a liked coach in this day and age. The community's almost never behind you. The parents most likely are in the stands, complaining about your every move that you're making. If their son's not playing, they're not doing this. Kids just are a little bit less happy nowadays, I think, with social media and all that stuff. It's just a tough time to be a coach, tough time to be a teacher, administrator, everything. It's just a weird world we're living in. And you had fun because guess what? At the end of the day, it's just a sport. And sometimes I feel like we maybe get too caught up in the wins or the losses. And if you're a program like Owosso, just be glad that these kids are doing something with their time other than, screwing around and doing things they probably shouldn't be doing. So it's if they're judging a coach's success at Owosso off of the wins and losses, then they've already lost.
Right. Yeah, kind of to your point too, as you were saying that with the social media era, and then thinking about what Ted was saying about building a program, I think, and you saying it's a different time. It's the whole instant gratification that is such a big deal nowadays. People don't want to build a program. They want to make a hire and they want you to be winning right now, and it's maybe a little different in high school, but you see it in college and professional sports. They give coaches a year or two and then they're like, you're out, and it's sometimes it takes a bit to build a program, especially in high school. Sometimes you just have a stretch where 2 or 3 classes just aren't good. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just don't have very good athletes for a couple of years. And it's kind of you almost have to say let's get through these couple of years because we got some freshmen coming up, or there's some 8th graders that are going to be really good. So let's get through these couple of years. And then when we get to them, hopefully we can turn it around. But yeah, kids, it is different, and I'm seeing my nieces and nephews are older than my kids. They're in the high school age, and I'm getting a good window, talking about being back home. I hung out with them quite a bit. I'm getting a good look at what it's going to be like when my kids get older. And it is
scary.
And this is different. It's just different, on their phones and, social media and trying to limit TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff. And this is sidetracked from the prep spotlight, but what you're talking about, Jared, it's different now. And it would be tough. As you were saying all that, I was thinking about one of, my classmates, a friend of the pod, Kyle Clough, who's having a lot of success up at Rockford. And, like your dad, Jared obviously had a lot of success as a head coach. You got to have some good mentors too. And I think Kyle would say your dad was one of his big mentors as a coach. And I don't know, maybe you got to have some people that can guide you in the right way. And I don't know, maybe some coaches don't. They try and do their own thing.
Right.
It's just like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do it my way. And that's it. And it doesn't work all the time. So well, it's tough to see because it kind of sucks for the kids. They just want to play ball. They just want to play basketball. They know they're not very good. They just want to play basketball.
Well, I don't know if they do. So
maybe not. Maybe
take a look on like Instagram, and like there'll be kids that they maybe touch the floor like a minute or two, and they have like a whole recruiting profile set up as if they're the next Zion. That's not. Yeah. You probably noticed that in your research.
Oh yeah,
it's like. I don't know what's changed. Maybe it was like that when I was playing. It's the ball is life. It's the ESPN. It's the highlight reels. It's everywhere you look now. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the parents. I don't know if it's who or it's just the kids. That I love having confidence in yourself, but I just feel like there's maybe a disconnect sometimes. I'm not sure if that's Owosso. Like you said, you would think it. Hopefully these kids just, it's like, let's just go have some fun. But I don't know. I worry that that's maybe not the case.
We could do a whole podcast discussion on what we're talking about right now. First of all, I want to say both you guys laid it out perfectly. Hear me sitting on the outside, the elder statesman, if you will. I've seen definitely some changes. Now, kids are kids. If you have the right coach and you have the right parenting, you still can be like when we played. I remember there was a junior high game where I was sicker than a dog. And I went to school for half a day and came home. I had a game that night and I wanted to play so bad that my mom said, well, your dad's going to check out how you're feeling when he gets home from work. Well, I knew what time he got home from work. I went outside. It was wintertime, of course, because it was basketball season. I knew he was coming home within a couple of minutes. And I went outside and put my forehead on the brick of the house outside so it would cool off. And he came home, put his hand on my head. Oh, no, I guess you're all right. And I went to play that night, sicker than a dog. But that's how we were.
Flu game.
That's it. That's how we were. There's no way we would miss a game or practice. And, without getting into any specifics, I see it on the outside. I hear things, kids are going to do something during holiday break and miss a basketball game. Are you kidding me? That would never happen with my group ever, especially me.
It all leads back to the rally outside of the why am I drawing a blank on the government building in Lansing? The Let Us Play rally. Capitol. The Let Us Play rally, and then like 2 weeks later, when spring break happened, half the state couldn't even foster a game because they didn't have enough kids. It's like, what else do you need to point to other than that very succinct scenario where when it's cool, they're all for it, and then as soon as the spring break rolls around, there's no games to be had.
Well, the sad part is that's, with that attitude and with that going on, that's not really getting prepared for life, because life doesn't always go your way either. That's why the good and bad of sports really helps you in life. How's that for an editorial comment, huh?
It does. And we all grew up playing and watching sports. So we've seen, the benefits of competing and playing in a team, being a good teammate, all that kind of stuff, and see how it translates into the real world. And this could be a whole podcast, but you're seeing it with the transfer portal, in college football. Personally, I think it's a good thing, but then you see how the bad of it. A kid goes to school, doesn't start right away, boom, I'm going to transfer. Instead of sticking it out and trying to work for that starting job. Goes to another school, maybe doesn't start. Okay, I'm going to transfer. And it's like that's not necessarily what it should be for. We could talk about that for probably 20, 30 minutes, but that's kind of along the same lines.
Well, we got to save a little time for the meat and potatoes before we wrap up the prep spotlight. Good news on Owosso. The girls basketball team having a great season, 6-3. They just came off a 45-40 win over Okemos. And I got to say a shout out to the Corunna girls bowling squad. We don't talk bowling very often here, but I think it's cool that they added that sport in high school. Corunna's off to a 5-0 start. Carly Pavka, she has a 200 average in bowling, and Emily Rodman 188. right behind her. That's pretty impressive. And also impressive, New Lothrop. We talked about their basketball and all their sports programs. The wrestlers, again, ranked number 1 in Division 4. They're off to a 7-0 start after a recent win over Ovid Elsie. So some good stuff to end the prep spotlight, fellas.
Speaking of New Lothrop, again, back to full circle, talking about if we wanted to move back home. My wife asked, like, where would you want to live? Just that kind of thing. Obviously, I threw out like Grand Rapids, maybe like one of the suburbs, somewhere around Detroit, something like that. I was like, but if we were going to live like in Shiawassee County-ish, let's look at New Lothrop, man. There's she's like, oh, are the schools good? I'm like, I think the schools are good, but man, their athletic program is incredible.
But John Fattel, the Corona superintendent, hearing this is going to go, what on earth?
Hey, problem for when you move back.
Yeah,
I would say I would agree with those two. I think New Lothrop, you probably win a title.
Yeah,
so it's hard to turn that down.
Real hard to turn it down. All right, well let's get into some football talk. We'll start. We'll get into some college sports here right after this. All right, guys. I gotta say this. You guys were so depressed and inebriated, maybe, but no instant reaction video after that Michigan loss. I've already had a couple of people say, "What happened? You guys front runners?"
Oh. Yeah, well, if they listened to the podcast, the one that we recorded at Memorial, they would know that we took some time off. Yeah, we didn't do the instant reaction video. I'll be honest, it wasn't just because Michigan lost, because I definitely would have had some thoughts to give out. We were hanging out with some friends, for New Year's, and it was kind of like I didn't want to take the time to step away and record it and post it, and these all sound like excuses. I understand that, but obviously we were having some drinks too, but. No, we got to give our thoughts, because it did happen. Michigan lost. I think, honestly, for me, I don't know what you guys think, but leading up to the game, it seemed like everyone was saying Michigan's going to win. This is just a given. Maybe TCU might hang around because of their quarterback, but no, Michigan's going to win this. And I was just like, this is just like, Ted, you always bring up karma. I was like, this is like bad karma. No, like this is not a given. And you could see it from the start. First play of the game, Donovan Edwards, boom, 54 yards. And I was, probably a lot of people are like, here we go. Michigan's about to run away with this thing. And then what do? They get down to the goal line. We could do a whole hour on this. I don't understand bringing in a dude who's been playing linebacker for so long as a running back, Mullings. I know he's played running back and stuff, but like Donovan Edwards is your horse. He's your guy that got you there. Give him the ball on the goal line. I understand he's not Jerome Bettis. I don't care. Give him the ball on the goal line. But then so that was a different possession. But then they run that on the fourth down. They run that stupid Wolverine special, the Philly special, with a true freshman tight end, a play they haven't run all year. I'm sure they practiced it and they thought they had it perfected. But it's just like, what are you doing? Trying to get too cute. That's one of my biggest takeaways. I know I'm going all over the place here. That's one of my biggest takeaways. So many times in that game, they tried to get too cute. Do what got you there. Run the ball. When you get to the goal line, run the ball. JJ McCarthy can run. Roll him out. Like, it just seemed like multiple times they got too cute. Yeah, the refs, the whole Roman Wilson touchdown thing, that was unfortunate. But then you bring the linebacker in and run the ball, and he fumbles it. So it's just like, what? Honestly, I think Michigan lost it. So many times at work, when I got back to work, people were like, I'm sorry, man, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, Michigan did it to themselves. Yeah. Michigan did it to themselves. They could have won that game, and they shot themselves in the foot too many times.
They came in so cocky, and I'll be honest, I did too. All of a sudden, like one of the very first plays of the game, Johnston makes a catch. Oh yeah, this is the number 1 wide receiver in the country. I didn't know who the hell the guy was. And next thing I know, this guy is like the best athlete on the field. So I can raise my hand. Every time people ask me, I never really said I was worried about TCU. I wasn't. And if you watch that game, we really shouldn't have been. They had to line up perfectly to lose that game. A lot of people are blaming it on the coaches. I don't. I think sometimes the players just got to make some plays. The one thing I do blame on Harbaugh is the Philly special play call. Idiotic. Didn't work. You could clearly tell they're in zone coverage. Corner is literally just, as they send, whoever was in motion.
Nobody moved.
Corner is just sitting there waiting for McCarthy to come back out. I will put that on Harbaugh. Bad call. Yeah. I'll even say Harbaugh did a decent job at some points. Obviously we saw the second half adjustments they always made this entire year. And remember, at the very end of the game, when the clock was dwindling, even his dad was like, what the hell are you doing, letting this clock dwindle? And it kind of seemed like the smart thing. They ended up getting the ball back with a minute left, which what more could you ask for? they just came in way too cocky, I felt like.
Yeah.
And people are blaming it on, handing it off to the fullback or the, former linebacker. I mean, what is it with Edwards? I just feel like he can't punch it in. Like, I just feel like he's either boom or bust. It's either he's falling backwards for maybe, half a yard gain or tackle in the backfield. I mean, we had 13 TFLs.
Yeah.
It's like he just couldn't get anything going. He's such a boomer bust player. I mean, how many times did you say to yourself, man, I just wish we had Corum. Corum would solve this issue. Corum would solve that. And it's funny looking back. Remember when the whole first 8 or 9 weeks of the year, we were just saying how this red zone offense is our problem. And then we kind of forgot about it for a few weeks. They kind of solved it. And when when the chips were down, that's what ended up being the biggest issue in the biggest game. It's depressing because it's weird looking ahead to next year. Obviously, it's good news that Harbaugh is back, but I don't think it'll ever lay itself out as perfectly as it did for this college football playoff. We saw Georgia is very beatable. Ohio State really should have beat them.
Should have beat them, yeah. Yeah, you bring up good points. Both you guys do, and it's funny. Right out of the get go, we're talking about the plays that didn't work. I said to my wife when Edwards got caught on that first run, I said, if he'd have taken that into the end zone, this game is completely different because, that forced them to try and still get the point. They passed up the 3. I said, I thought they should have kicked the field goal, and they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, right for him getting caught from behind.
I didn't mind them going. I didn't mind them going for that 4th down. It was just weird. Like after, they called a timeout or there was a timeout and they came back with that Philly special. And it's always one of those things. If that play call worked, then it would be what a play call by Jim Harbaugh, blah, all that kind of stuff. Same in the Super Bowl with the Eagles, the Philly special. If that didn't work, it would have been stupidest play call ever. It worked. One of the best plays in Super Bowl history. But the big thing, and I saw some people talk about it, and I didn't think about it at the time, what also made that play call stupid, they were on the 1 yard line and they ended up losing 10 yards. Yeah. So when TCU got the ball back, you go from, maybe if you run it and you just get stuffed, okay, well, TCU has it at the 1 yard line. You can maybe get a safety. Now you lose 10 yards. TCU's just they're fine. They're perfectly fine at the 10 yard line. So, that's what also made it kind of strange. JJ McCarthy, a lot of people are taking shots at him. He threw 2 pick sixes. Along with the Michigan trying to get too cute, it was just an uncharacteristic game to me for Michigan. He hasn't thrown pick sixes all year. That's just not what he does. The first one, I think, was just an awesome play by the cornerback. He just jumped that route. He made a great interception and took it back. That was just a great play. The second pick six, 100% was just a bad read, bad throw by JJ. But otherwise, he really played a good game. He was hitting deep balls in the second half. He was using his legs. Really, that gave me, other than the pick sixes, that gave me a glimpse of what he can be with a full offseason practicing with the first teamers, because you remember last offseason, there was a whole competition. He was even hurt for a few months. So now that gave me a glimpse of okay, this is what he could be if they let him run, he can run, let him run.
The game plan was, it seemed, I was kind of praising Harbaugh. I need to come back over top on him a little bit. The game plan was a little bizarre. I don't know if it was because of the pick six or because of the early 4th down stop. It seems like we just got out of our element, almost right away, where McCarthy is having to throw the ball all over the yard. And I know the big stat everybody's throwing out was after that initial Edwards run, I think Michigan was only rushing for 3 yards per carry. Mm-hmm. What was going on? Why was that? I think it's because we gave them a lot of bulletin board material. I mean, McCarthy, we're going to cram it down their throat if they stay in the 3-3-5. I mean, just why? That was the first time in my life. How it's Michigan State fans are always you guys are way too cocky heading into this game.
And
that's the first time in my life I actually felt like that was the case. Yeah. It just, I don't know why. I was very shocked that they came out that way. I thought Harbaugh would have their head, more on straight, and it just didn't seem like they did. For McCarthy, 2 pick sixes we talk about with Goff. It's very easy to lose a game as a quarterback. He played great after the pick sixes. He showed a lot of grit. It almost seemed like the pick sixes didn't even affect him as he's leading this comeback charge. But if he doesn't throw those 2 balls, I think Michigan still finds a way to win. So it's just unfortunate. I agree with what you said. I like what I saw from him, how he kind of battled the adversity, but still, it's just, you can't throw 2 pick sixes, not in the college football playoff, not even in a Big Ten regular season game almost.
Right.
And really that fumble on the goal line, you could kind of say was maybe on him, not getting the ball. So really those 3 plays right there might have turned the whole game around.
And they didn't play well, but they did show a lot of gumption coming back in that game. But let's not let's not forget, I'm not going to throw it out there that's the excuse that they lost, but how on earth do you not make that touchdown call in the end zone when it's called a touchdown on the field and then it's reviewed? And
it's bad. That's just the fact of the matter. You know, like you said, Jared, Michigan State fans take shots at Michigan fans for coming up with all these excuses or whatever. That is not an excuse. That was an awful call. Even when people like Joel Klatt and other people are saying like, what the hell was that? That's the point. And everyone has said it over and over and over that you said, Ted, it was called a touchdown on the field. There was nothing there that warranted overturning it. It should have just been a stands. He caught the ball. And it's also one of those things like sometimes replay, yes, it's good to get the call right. I agree with that. Sometimes replay, like with the whole all the way back to the Megatron completing the process, he caught the ball in the end zone. Like, what are we doing? That was a touchdown. Like, what are you really trying to do? Like, same with Megatron. Megatron caught the ball. He scored. It should have been a touchdown.
And that's the one time it's ever like backfired on the offense. You know, it's like, just call it a touchdown, man. In real time, it's a touchdown. In replay, it's a touchdown. The pace of the game, the excitement, it's a touchdown. Like it's just so silly. One positive note, I will say, and it's funny because it was a negative subject all year. These wide receivers came out and balled out, man. I mean, Ronnie Bell had one catch on like kind of he got tackled right near the goal line where he like reached out, kind of snatched it at the last second. I mean, that was an incredible catch. And it was a big time play when Michigan needed it. Roman Wilson, I mean, he had a very fun game. I like watching him play. So I guess that was one positive note with this wide receiver core. You know, when the ships were down, they showed up and they showed that they can make plays at the biggest level. So I just thought that was worth one very small bright spot of that game.
And you speak of the receivers. I mean, I guess we figured out what happened to Andrell Anthony. You know, he wasn't happy. There might have been some attitude issues with Harbaugh and the staff, but he didn't play like we thought he was going to play this year. So what's he do? He enters the portal.
Enters the portal, and if you look at his Twitter, he's got like 60 tweets of like received an offer from here, received an offer from here. So he's going to go play
State, right?
Yeah, he'll go to Michigan State for sure.
Seems like it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm worried about it.
And he'd probably love to stick it to Michigan, score some touchdowns against Michigan. But I mean, there are definitely some positives. You know, there's a lot coming back next year. We're probably going to talk about Harbaugh. There's a little bit of a question there with Harbaugh, but you know, there's a lot coming back on Michigan. So it's just, you don't want to get used to you don't get to the playoff every year. I know Michigan has made it back-to-back years. It kind of sucks to like think we made 2 straight playoffs and didn't get a win in either. We beat Ohio State 2 years in a row. Yeah, you won a couple Big Ten championships, which is cool. But like, it's almost like we got nothing out of it. You know, like you can't take for granted going to the playoff. Yeah, I know it's going to expand to 12 teams. So that kind of helps. You can lose a game and still make the playoff. But, you know, it kind of stinks like this, like you kind of set it up, Jared, earlier. This was the year that it feels like Michigan really could have taken advantage because last year Georgia was just on another level. It didn't matter. But this was the year, just get by. That like when Michigan got the ball with a minute left, down 6, I was like, they're going to somehow pull this out. They're going to somehow pull this out and just get by. I don't care. Just get to Georgia. And then we don't need it. But like that last drive, it was like, what the hell are you doing? It was like incomplete. Like what is happening? And then the last play, they fumbled the ball. It was just like, I honestly thought when they got the ball back, I was feeling good. I was like, they got this. JJ's going to pull out some crazy couple plays and they're going to do this. And
is it? But I and it's kind of funny because if this was if TCU did this against any other team, they'd be like my favorite college football team ever. I hate TCU. I want them to get absolutely railroaded against Georgia. One positive thing, and then I want to talk about the targeting. What your guys' thoughts are on that. One positive thing, and as Ohio State, that game was coming down to the wire. If Ohio State would have beat Georgia and Michigan was the one that blew a potential Ohio State-Michigan championship game, it would have never been let down. I would have never forgotten it. College football would have never been the same. Because just imagine if we were getting ready for a Michigan-Ohio State game tomorrow night in the national championship. It's the closest it'll ever be. It'll never happen if it didn't happen this year. So I guess that's one positive.
Hold that thought on the targeting because I just want to jump in real quick. The best thing about the Michigan loss was Ohio State losing.
Yeah.
I mean, that made it feel a little bit better to me. Just a little bit.
I mean, ultimately, like, you know, I just wanted Michigan to lose, but yeah, seeing Ohio State lose, it did make it like, okay, this is okay because if it would almost would have been a wash. If Ohio State beat Georgia and then ended up winning the national title, people would almost forget that Michigan smoked Ohio State in Columbus and won the Big Ten. They'd be like, oh, well, Ohio State won the national title. Who
Right.
cares? But, the targeting, I know we were going to talk about the targeting, that the last play of the game, I mentioned that last drive. That's just another one. Who knows what would have happened if they called it targeting, but I think most people saw that was textbook targeting. I mean, that last play on Loveland, I mean, he goes down and the defender leads with the crown of his helmet, drills him basically in the back of the head. I don't know how you review that and don't call it targeting. There were a few other ones in the Ohio State game, and in one
Marvin
other game there was another targeting. It was happening all over
Harrison,
the place. And it's just like, if you're gonna, I just don't understand. Be consistent with it. If you're going to call targeting at other points in the game, how are you not seeing these ones that are obvious? That the one in the Michigan game, the last play of the game, was as obvious a targeting as there is. And, people were like, but the game was over. Michigan would have got another chance.
Yes, they
would have got a first down. They would have had another chance. So, like, I don't
here's the thing, Matt. The referee didn't make the call. Upstairs made the call, right? To review it. How do you review that and not get it right?
I don't. Here's where I was at during that whole thing. When it happened, I'm thinking if it just feels stupid. Like, wouldn't you feel almost like dirty if that call happens? Michigan comes back on the field, they win the game on some miracle touchdown. They lost the game, and obviously, selfishly, I would have loved to have seen the targeting call.
Yep,
but it would have made me kind of feel guilty if
it would have been tainted.
Because it just the game was over. It was a dumb play by that TCU player. It definitely was targeting, but I mean, you fumble the snap. You have to do this whole flip it around. It's like, you guys don't deserve to win this game. TCU won this game.
Yeah.
That was how I felt. I actually walked out of the room, came back, saw replays of this. Like, oh, they must be reviewing something. And almost as soon as that happened, they announced that it wasn't targeting, and that was it. So it just
that is a good point. I mean, Michigan probably didn't deserve to get that targeting call and get another chance, because we know if they would have called it targeting and Michigan got the ball back, and like you said, they score some miracle touchdown, win the game, people would have been like, oh, the refs gave Michigan another chance, and they gifted Michigan this win or whatever. So it played out the way it was supposed to. It's a shame, like we've said a number of times already, because they had a hell of a season. I mean, they were a legitimate national title contender. And it just kind of stinks, because you never know. You never know how seasons are going to go. They might lose 3 games next year. Who knows? So,
as football fans, and I think this goes all throughout the country, as football fans, as all three of us are, can you imagine a college football semifinal evening on New Year's Eve that was any better than that, throwing out the fact that Michigan lost the 2 games and all that they had going on? Ohio State loses it at the stroke of midnight on the field goal attempt. I mean, their quarterback, CJ, had a great game, and they had a pretty good game plan. And, I actually was I would have pulled for Ohio State. I'll put it that way, if Michigan would have won.
Yeah.
But it didn't disappoint me at the end.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like I mentioned, we were with some friends, and I happened to be the one controlling the remote, and I'm sure you guys were experiencing the same thing. But I wanted to see that Ohio State game, but then obviously it's going down to midnight. You want to watch the ball drop. So right before the field goal, I flip back and it's 57, 56. So we're like, all right, we got to watch this, as ball drops, we do our little toast and, whatever else.
Yeah.
By the time I flip back over to Ohio State, it's the replay of the missed field goal. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't miss anything, but that was crazy.
Yeah. I was at, and I'm going to come back to, I'll bring it full circle, but I was out on New Year's Eve, and my God, I was saying Christmas was a depressing day. New Year's Eve is literally holiday or regular day on the calendar year, the worst day of the year. Out at the bar, couldn't move. Literally, I kid you not, I'm literally a group of 6 or 7 people back to get to the bar, to get to the bathroom. There's trash bags over all 3 of the urinals. Other than one, takes 5 minutes to even go to the bathroom. Once you get there, it's kind of hard to even go, because you got people waiting on you. And you're just sitting there drinking, and people are constantly moving around. You're constantly making yourself skinny, letting people get around you. I tell you what, as soon as the ball dropped or whatever, I left within 20 minutes after that. It just was over. New Year's Eve, I hate going out on it. But anyway, Ohio State, I'll give them props. They battled. I don't know about you guys. I thought they didn't deserve to be in. I thought they were the worst team. I thought they got embarrassed by Michigan. They heard so much negativity going into this game, and they came out and played. I mean, if Harrison Jr. doesn't get hurt, who knows? They should have won that game even without him in the second half. But it was good to see. I was rooting for Ohio State. I love the way they battle. I'm always going to root for the Big Ten. I'm so sick of the SEC dominance.
Yeah.
And this was the year that the Big Ten really should have made their presence known with 2 teams in the national championship, and they both blew it.
Yep.
How about Kirby Smart, though? He won the game. That shows you what coaching can do. When he called timeout on that fake punt, that was huge.
It was.
It is. It's kind of along the lines of like what you mentioned earlier, Jared, with Harbaugh, kind of letting the clock run down, saving his timeouts, and the Michigan did end up getting the ball back. Coaching does come into play with that. We've talked about with Dan Campbell a lot this year with the Lions. Kirby, he's up there. He's obviously one of the best. Still hard to put it. You can't put anyone above Saban, I think, at this point. But Kirby's right there, and he's got that program going. So I'm with you though, Jared. As far as the title game, we're recording on Sunday. The title game is tomorrow night. I hope Georgia smashes TCU. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to see TCU win and be like, well, at least the team that beat Michigan won the national title. No,
I want to see TCU win just because they were forecasted to be 7th in their conference before the season began. Their quarterback, who was Heisman runner up, he takes over and takes them to the national championship.
Cool.
Hell, I'm rooting for TCU all the way.
If they didn't beat Michigan, I would have. Here's, I guess, one final thing in college football that is a positive. College football is fixed. We saw that with the playoff. TCU brought in 12 transfers, especially bolstered their defensive line. Sonny Dykes had some quote basically saying how you can build a roster so many different ways now. It used to only be, you had to win the recruiting, which schools like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan are going to dominate. School like TCU can't. But now that you can go out and transfer portal, NIL, any one of these teams can build a team. So it's awesome to see. I just love it. I mean, like you said, it's no surprise that the first year we actually had 2 good games was when this NIL and transfer portal was really cooking. So that's one good thing about it. Sucks that Michigan was the sacrificial lamb for it, but
it is. It's a different game, and you have to wonder if that's contributing to part of why Jim Harbaugh keeps flirting with the NFL. Because he has said it before. In one of John U. Bacon's books, he had a quote about, it's hard to compete with the cheaters. Basically, that's not verbatim, but, obviously referencing SEC teams pre-NIL that were clearly just paying players to come. And, it would be hard. It'd be frustrating to try and be running a clean program. You're going to do the NIL stuff now that that's legal in the transfer portal. It'd be frustrating to be trying to run a clean program and do things the right way and continue to lose. Harbaugh's got this program going. I mean, they're back. You can say Michigan is back. They've won 2 straight Big Ten titles, beat Ohio State 2 times in a row. But to be trying to compete with Georgia's and Alabama and, some of these other schools, and then see the transfer portal where TCU can be picked to finish 7th in their conference and they just bolster their roster and, all that kind of stuff. You have to wonder if that's part of what's making Harbaugh flirt with the NFL. Yeah. I personally think, like the news came out this morning, Ted, we were talking about it before we started recording. Apparently Harbaugh is going to interview with the Broncos or something. I personally think this is all just a play by his agent, him and his agent, to get Michigan to finally ante up. I said this before we started recording. I think it was valid after like 2019, 2020 for Michigan to kind of be like, let's kind of back off this contract a little bit because this program is kind of starting to slip. So I think at that point it was valid. You don't want to see him have a Mel Tucker, James Franklin type of deal. Then he's beat Ohio State 2 times in a row. He's won 2 straight Big Ten titles, 2 straight trips to the playoff. This program is back. They're recruiting, they're getting transfers, all that kind of stuff. Pay him. Like, what are you doing? You're coming off of Rich Rod and Hoke, and you're seeing what's happening all over college football. If you get a coach like a Sonny Dykes at TCU, you think Georgia's going to let Kirby Smart go? No, they're going to hang on to Kirby Smart as long as they can. Look what Alabama does with Saban. They pay Saban anything he wants. He's the highest paid public
employee in Alabama.
Yeah, in Alabama. He makes more money than anyone else in Alabama because they know, like, look at his value. That's what Harbaugh is for Michigan. And honestly, if they let him go, I think it's Michigan's fault. I almost a side of me I want him to go, to stick to Michigan and be like, look at what you're doing. Just give him his contract.
No,
pay him.
He should reset the market. He should be the #1 highest paid coach this offseason. And then, give it a couple of years when Smart or Saban gets their extension, then he's not. But
Right.
I don't, people saying top 5. No, just pay them, make them the most. Michigan has the money to do it.
Yeah.
If State is doing this with Mel Tucker, who proved nothing, then you should be able to do this with Jim Harbaugh, who has shown 2 college football playoffs, beat Ohio State twice. Literally the only coach I can imagine coaching the Wolverines. If it was a new coach next year, I might not even watch. Make him the highest paid guy. I'll say this. I mean, do you guys think Harbaugh is 100% staying? Sounds like, Matt, you think he is. I
don't.
I'm glad we didn't record
100%.
Really? Him coming out with that statement and people were like, oh, he, quote unquote, he expects. I think Harbaugh is just a weird, kind of interesting guy who I don't blame him. Why would he put himself in a corner with this NCAA BS coming down on him for buying a recruit a $10 burger? And who knows what else is going on in the NCAA, man.
Right.
And they were like, oh, well, Harbaugh's reaction wasn't pleasant, or whatever the wording was. I just imagine that conversation going down. The NCAA commissioner, hey, just want to check in on this. See, you bought a recruit a burger at this one place. Dude, why are you even looking into this?
Right.
This is so stupid. And then it's like stuff from COVID 3 years ago. It's like you're just now
Watching
getting a
video.
Of it. What is going on?
Yeah.
So
that's kind of my point. Maybe that's what's all contributing to Harbaugh being like,
had enough.
Not to drop an F-bomb, but be like, F this, man. I'm done with this.
No, I don't blame him. If he went to the NFL, I would say good riddance. You did your job, and you were here for a long time. I never expected you ever to come here in the first place.
Right.
And college football has changed. It seems like the worst thing in the world to coach it. So I wouldn't blame any coach for leaving, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we're all 3 Harbaugh guys for sure for Michigan, but we wouldn't blame him either. I'd say it's probably, I'm going to say 70-30 that he stays. That's my guess at this point. And I think they will come up and pay him, maybe not more than Saban, but in Saban range, we'll see. And they need to, if he's going to stick around and put up with the bullshit that he has to deal with there, for sure. One thing, though, and he's done everything that we've asked from him, Big Ten championships, college football playoffs. The one thing he has got to get off his back now, and he got by Ohio State too. You got to do a little bit better at the end of the year. What is it, 1-6 in the last bowl seasons?
Yeah,
that's not good.
Yeah, and it's kind of along the lines that I don't disagree with you at all. So I'm not trying to say it doesn't matter. I think the bowl thing has changed a little bit. 1-6 is not good, but so many guys opt out of bowls now, and like if you're playing in the redbox.com bowl, sometimes you don't really care about it. But the thing is, Michigan tends to play in bigger bowls. So it is kind of like, all right, if you want to get to that next level, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, you got to win some of these games. But I really hope that's not the card that Michigan is playing.
Exactly.
You've won Big Tens, you've turned this around, you've beat Ohio State, but you can't win those bowl games, so we're not going to pay you a contract. That'd be like, again, Harbaugh should be like, F you, I'm out of here, man.
Right.
If you go back to Brady Hoke if you want. I know you love Brady Hoke, Jared, but go back to Hoke if you want.
No, like I said, if Harbaugh's gone, it'll never be the same watching Michigan football. There's nobody for this job. I mean, look at the candidates. Matt Campbell literally, I don't know, man. It'd be depressing to watch Michigan take the field next year, and it's somebody like that leading them out. Bill O'Brien.
Right.
My God. I will say about the bowl record. The only thing that matters to me is 0-2 in college football playoff.
Yeah,
and even that, the only thing that really matters, I didn't expect them to beat Georgia last year. Nobody was going to beat Georgia last year, is 0-1 in 2022 college football playoff. That's the only game that I hold against them.
Fair enough. Well, before we get into some Lions talk, briefly, let's get into Michigan State, Michigan basketball. Matt, I think you tweeted it. Is this the start of the basketball season officially for us yesterday? Watching that game, it was a nasty game, but it kind of is to me. It's kind of the beginning now of basketball season. It's still football season, of course, but it does kind of get me a little excited for hoops.
Yeah, I mean, now it does finally. Maybe it helps that Michigan's not playing tomorrow in the national championship game. But it does, now that we're into the new year, March is only a couple months away. It does feel like, all right, it's college basketball season. Jared, you tweeted it out basically about how ugly that game was. I mean, as Michigan State fans, we love watching that battle at Breslin, and that's some ugly basketball.
It was.
And I do still think Michigan, Michigan State's never not going to make the tournament. The NCAA is going to do everything to get Izzo in the tournament every single year. I do still think Michigan's going to find a way to make the tournament. They'll eke out some wins in the Big Ten. Maybe they'll even beat Michigan State in Michigan, mid-February or in Ann Arbor when they play in a few weeks or whatever. I think they'll figure out a way to make the tournament. But Jared, you said something about like these programs falling off. I'm not off the Juwan Howard bandwagon. I still think he's a good college basketball coach. I just think it's the whole everything we've been saying, whether it's high school basketball, college football, whatever. It's just a different game. I mean, we're lucky to have Hunter Dickinson, who's been there for 3 years. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have Hunter Dickinson, I don't know if I'd really even want to watch this team, because he's about the only interesting thing about this team that keeps them kind of in games. Jet Howard, yeah, he's going to be in the NBA. He's going to be a good player. But like, to me, sometimes it seems like he's just kind of going through the motions. He's just out there playing ball. They've got some other decent freshmen that, can play. But it's just kind of like, what is this team? I tweeted something about like Michigan going from Darius Morris to Trey Burke to Derek Walton to Xavier Simpson. We don't have that if not for Hunter Dickinson. We don't have that like just veteran. I know Terrence Williams has been there a little bit, but like that's my problem with Michigan. And it back to like how things are just different. You get transfers in, it's the one and dones. And this program is just like, what are you excited about with Michigan basketball? It really is. You hope Hunter Dickinson just goes off, and
it's just depressing. It's funny, like they say the NBA is like the most talent it's ever had. I think college basketball has the least amount of talent it's ever had. It wasn't long ago where Julius Randle, senior, whatever, first year at Kentucky, the 1 year he was there against Michigan State Champions Classic, very first night of the college basketball season, where I was standing up a foot away from the TV, living and dying on every basket that happened in that game. Now it's like you're saying how it's like basketball season. I'm depressed just thinking about it. It's horrible basketball. Michigan State. What did I just watch yesterday? Right. Both teams terrible. 12-12. It felt like at the end of the first half. Oh my God. These programs, man, they've really fallen from grace. College basketball as a whole has fallen from grace. Now we're hearing that it might be a 90-team tournament. The tournament's still great. We all know that, but it's really, really hard for me to get up and get going for these regular season matchups, man. And it's just depressing to watch Michigan. This is a team that, think about like those years where we had Trey Burke, Robinson, Hardaway Jr. We had like 5 starting, players that were all pro players other than Jordan Morgan maybe. And they were like a 5 seed in the tournament that year. I think if that team was transported to college basketball nowadays, they are probably 20-0 roaring into the NCAA tournament. I mean, watching that game yesterday, you said Jet Howard, true freshman. Yeah, he's probably a pro. Is there any other pro on the floor?
Dickinson will probably get drafted just because he's tall.
He can't jump over a phone book, man. He can't jump. It's depressing. I don't understand sometimes why he doesn't dunk more. And I've probably said it on this podcast before. I'm not one that can dunk, so that's coming. But like, he just tries to lay it up so many times. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Dunk the ball. Yeah. It was just, I don't know. It's college basketball's in crisis right now, if I'm being honest. And so, yes, we'll be up for the tournament, but watching that game is like watching paint dry. Going from watching TCU versus Michigan in the college football playoff to watching that, two wildly different sports.
Yeah, you got that right. And Jet Howard, I'm sure he's going to be a good ball player, but I watch him right now. When I watch him, I don't go, man, I'm stamping him an NBA player all the way. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe he is.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, he's going to get drafted just based off. I mean, who else in college basketball is going to get, has that like potential or whatever? He just seems like, to me, he's just playing one-on-one ball. Like that's how he's gotten through his whole life. Just playing one-on-one ball. That's what he's done his whole life. AAU, probably high school, whatever. Gets to Michigan, that's what he's doing. So
I got one last thing on this. It seems like transfer portal has fixed college football. It has ruined college basketball. I mean, even think about a couple years ago, like that Gonzaga team with Suggs, Timmy, and then Michigan had a loaded team. State was good that year. Like it feels like we're so far away from even that level of college basketball with all these. I mean, Michigan lost. Who was they lost the good point guard to Arizona State this year? Drawing a blank on his name, but it's like you just can't build a program, and that's so important in college basketball. That's what made it great for all those years.
Well, mainly because it's 5 players on the team starting. So wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's different too because when Juwan came in, there were some guys that had been there a couple of years, so that's maybe why he had some success in those first couple of years as a coach. Now he's just getting these transfers in and out and relying on true freshmen, which, like you said, unless you have a Julius Randle, these dudes are Anthony Davis, who are just like legit studs. You're going to struggle, and that's you can't find your rhythm until January, February, and then you're maybe already out of it. So, like I said, I think Michigan's going to find a way to make the tournament, but are we going to be excited? The thing is, like you've said, Jared, if they can make the tournament and say everyone's healthy, you do have someone in Hunter Dickinson who in the tournament, one weekend, right, you can hope he has 2 good games and you make it to the second weekend. And you've got some guys and, Jet Howard and, a couple others who can score. So, like, if they can get to the tournament, they do have the talent to maybe win a game or 2. Like, that's just what you got to hope.
Wasn't it just sad watching that? I mean, think of the Michigan State, what that game has always meant on the calendar. Yeah. I remember, basically going to winter track meets, which who knows why I went to those. I was so slow. But I remember, we would be driving home. We got to pull off in, this random spot, go to this Hooters to watch this game.
Right.
That game, if that was happening yesterday, man, I'm driving right home, man.
Maybe. Well, that's what I mean. Like, if not for Hunter Dickinson, maybe Michigan State fans would have something else to say with their team. If not for Hunter Dickinson, what makes that game interesting?
Yeah.
Juwan versus Izzo, I guess. I don't know.
No, the best thing about that game was Gus Johnson and Jimmy Jackson. That was the best thing.
And I wanted to ask you guys that you reminded me right when they in the open of the game, they pointed out the 2 Michigan State fans with the TCU shirts on before we sign off. Is that lame? Is that like, what are you doing? Is that lame. Little brother energy? Like, what do you guys think about the Michigan State fans wearing TCU shirts?
I laughed.
I mean, it is funny. It's very lame, I would say, but it is funny. So whatever.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's we get long-winded when we haven't been together in a while.
Yeah.
We still have another little segment. We got NFL football to talk about, including our Detroit Lions, and we'll wrap it up with that right after this. All right, guys, we're recording on Sunday morning. Lions 8-8 at Lambeau Field to take on the 8-8 Packers. There's a lot of jawing going on about Aaron Rodgers, and Lions are going to come to win. And we don't know if they're going to be playing for a playoff spot or not. It all depends on that Seahawks game, the 4:00 game. But even if the Seahawks lose, what do you think's going to happen?
Let me ask you guys this before we get into that. What did you guys think of them making this a Sunday night game, knowing that it could mean nothing for us? I mean, not necessarily nothing, but in terms of playoff hopes, it could mean nothing for Lions fans. Probably will mean nothing for Lions fans come 8:00 tonight. Were you guys still okay with this decision?
Yeah, because it still means the Lions or the Packers have to win to get in. So even if it's nothing for the Lions could knock the Packers out of the playoffs, which would be pretty cool. And it's Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field. I mean, that's just
Sunday
a cool.
night.
That's a cool game.
I'm 100% on board.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've talked about with the Lions. Like, you just want to have the Lions playing meaningful games by Thanksgiving. That's like all we want. We're getting in the new year, January. The
Week
Lions
18.
are essentially playing a playoff game. This is essentially a playoff game. I mean, anyone who's not juiced up for this game, you're not really an NFL or a Lions fan, because this is awesome. It's Lions Packers at Lambeau Field. It's going to be cold as hell. It's going to be cold as hell. That doesn't really make sense, but
no,
it's going to be really cold, maybe snowing. Aaron Rodgers, like you said, talking trash. Lions don't like him. He doesn't respect the Lions. Lions can knock him out. I mean, it's going to be it's awesome. Sunday night football, Tirico and Collinsworth, like it's awesome.
No, it is going to be. I love, Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Sunday Night. He's going to come out slinging, man. And that makes me very nervous. I'll be honest. If Seattle wins and then, Aaron Rodgers comes out first drive, throwing it all over the yard, I think it could get ugly. I hope it doesn't. Fingers crossed it's a good game. I really do think we could see an ugly game. I mean, Packers are playing. It's so crazy. It's even crazier that the Packers are in this scenario than the Lions. I mean, they were worse off than the Lions were, whatever, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. And Aaron Rodgers just stayed the course, kept leading them to victory. They're playing so well. He was talking on Pat McAfee's show how, it's like all that matters is how you're playing right now into the year. Yeah. I mean, look at somebody like the Eagles. They're stumbling into the playoffs. Obviously, that has to do with Hurts being hurt. But it's like they're stumbling in. The Lions seem to be playing pretty well, and the Packers are playing maybe better than anybody. So it's just going to be really fun. old school Packers versus Lions Sunday night game. It's going to be 0 degrees there. It's going to be so damn cold, but it'll be fun to watch. I mean,
we know what's on the line. We know that the mindset could change a little bit for the Lions if Seattle does win. But, when you sit back and you look at this is the final game of the regular season. The Detroit Lions are in it. Like Matt said, this is the first round of the playoffs for the Lions, any way you slice it. But how do we look at this right now? Right now, what is our confidence level? Because there's probably a smaller piece of me right now going, oh, it's going to be a turd. They're going to lay a turd and they're going to get drilled by the Packers. But the other part of me, I want to keep the good karma going. I believe in this team. I think they're going to come out and ball out. I just have a feeling because, they're on the road. Nobody thinks they're going to beat the Packers at Lambeau, no matter what. I just got a feeling they're going to play a really good game.
It's going to come down to Jared Goff and that run defense. We saw what the Panthers did to the Lions in Carolina, a couple of weeks ago, running for like 350 yards. And the Packers have one of the best rush offenses in the NFL. So if the Lions can stop the run and, hope that Aaron Rodgers doesn't sling it all over, like you said, Jared, I think they got a chance. I think they can get up for one game. I think this is what you bring Dan Campbell here for. One game that he can go in there and motivate the hell out of those guys and be like, you're playing in a playoff game. You're the Detroit Lions playing in a playoff game at Lambeau Field right now. Like, what else do you want to ask for? I mean, this is what you want. This is why you play in the NFL.
There's two guys I'm looking to make some big time plays tonight. Amon-Ra, let's see what he's like in prime time, man. I love him. He's my favorite player on this team. Player. So much fun. I love everything about how he plays, man. And then Hutchinson. It's got to be a Hutchinson game. He's got to get pressure on Rodgers. We all know what happens if you don't get – I mean, most NFL quarterbacks, but especially Rodgers, if you don't get pressure on him, he will pick us apart. So I'm looking at Hutchinson and I'm looking at Amon-Ra. They got to have big games, and especially Jared Goff has to have a big game as well.
Yeah, I don't think I talked about it. I think I tweeted it a while back in the last game against the Bears. Notice how Hutchinson has slowed down a little bit, whether that's coaching, whether that's himself, but he's not running like a wild chicken, and he's containing on the end nowadays. I mean, he's made that step, and I think he's going to be nothing but better.
Yeah, and he needs to be today because I think that's big. If you can pressure Rodgers and sack him a few times, get him frustrated, get him yelling at his wide receivers and his offensive line, you can kind of get him to fall apart a little bit. If they let Rodgers just chill back there, he's going to pick them apart. And we know how that
and here's this is just such a fun game for so many reasons. Like you said, even if there's no playoff hopes on the line for the Lions, Rodgers is just must watch. He's been my favorite team to watch, the Packers, this entire year outside of the Lions. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve. A wide receiver screws something up. Surely they're going to go to the Exmo, slow motion replay of his face right after it. So I just can't wait to watch every second of this game. Let's just hope it's a good one. Even if the Lions end up losing, let's just hope it's a memorable game. Kind of what we always hope for with like a Michigan State, or Ohio State, Michigan game. Just give us something to remember.
Couldn't have asked for a better ending.
Yeah. And then are you guys on the side of, I've seen some people saying that they hope that the Rams lose, so the Seahawks win to help the Lions draft pick. And I'm just like, I don't understand as a Lions fan how you can say that. Like, no, you want to make the playoffs. How often do the Lions make the playoffs? And like to the point you said, Jared, if they can somehow make the playoffs, play in the way that they are,
who wants to play them?
I mean, they might match up with the Vikings, who they've already beaten, so it's kind of like the Jaguars. The Jaguars won last night.
Yeah.
They're a team that's playing really well going into the playoffs. I mean, they're a team that you probably don't want to play right now. So, no, I want the Lions to make the playoffs. I want them to go beat the Packers, make the playoffs. I'll take my chances.
If I was, rooting for the best story, I mean, how magical would it be if Matt Stafford took off the sling, put his pads on, and just said, this is for Detroit. I'm going to go out here and give it my all. I mean, what a story that would be.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, we'll see what happens, man. I mean, it sucks because it's, of course, there's a distraction for the Rams. McVay basically sounds like he's like leaving.
Yeah.
That comes out a day before this game. So
terrible.
We'll see where they're at. I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch. We have two Lions games today. First the Rams game, and then the Lions game tonight. Yep. So it'll be a good NFL Sunday.
Just wish the Rams they were at home, but that's the way it is. Before we wrap up, guys, and go Lions, #57. Monday Night Football this week. We got to briefly touch about that. What a scary thing. it's one of those things that you'll always remember,
Yeah.
you know, where you were watching that with Damar Hamlin going down. What a scary thing, but everybody's been talking about it. I mean, the emergency staff, man, so incredible.
I feel like the first responders, the emergency staff maybe hasn't been getting as much love as they should. I mean, and they're, you know, not saying, I think a lot of people get into that field, you know, they don't need the pat on the back. They get in there knowing they're going to save some lives. They don't need to be in the press. They don't need to be doing interviews on TV and podcasts and radio shows and stuff. So I do understand that side of it, but sometimes I've just felt like all the talk that's been going on, man, how incredible is it to see how quickly they responded? They literally saved his life on the field. I mean, they literally saved his life on the field. And, you know, and then obviously then when they got him to the hospital, everything else that happened after that, you know, kept him alive. And to the point where he's at now, where he's, you know, he's off the breathing tube and he's, you know, he's talking to people and he's, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's just incredible. And you know, it's one of those things that's scary. We all played football, you know, you know, through high school. You know the risks. You guys have probably too heard so many of the analysts talk about NFL players. You know the risks, but you never think it's going to maybe be something like that. You know, like paralysis is, you know, we've seen that happen on the field and some other really nasty injuries, but you don't necessarily think that is going to happen. So it is kind of like an eye-opening, holy crap, this game is really dangerous. So
it was such a weird, just like, you know, routine hits. Everybody says, just like I said, glad he's okay. It was, you know, we were all watching it. Everybody was watching. It was such a highly anticipated game. What a bizarre, something we'll probably maybe never see again. The way that everything went down with the postponement, cancellation. Right. I mean, what a predicament that was for the NFL to figure out. I think they kind of got it the best it could be with going forward with the playoff seeding and all that sort of thing. But yeah, just glad he's okay. I mean, it was just, what a weird kind of just crazy story we'll never see again. You never forget where you were when that happened, and it's just scary. I mean, you never see the NFL. I mean, there's so many injuries that we just kind of brush it off. It's like almost like, you know, just move on with the game. But that was like one where it's like the whole team's gathered around him, surrounding him. Players are crying. You know, you can just tell from Joe Burrow and Josh Allen's face, like this is something really bad. And what I've heard, basically, you know, talking about the first responders, basically, if this happened at like his house, he's probably not here today.
Right.
Basically, just, you know, have the fact that it happened at an NFL game where you know, they're right there, got to him right away. It's just, you know, glad he's okay, and feels weird moving on with football, but you just kind of just where we're at now. That's
a buddy and a few of us were talking at work yesterday when the NFL games were on, and we're like, I wonder. I mean, it'd be hard for that not to be in the back of their minds. You know, like when they're out playing, a defender going to hit somebody, you know, or if you get hit and you feel a little weird or something like that, not to have that in the back of your mind. I mean, you know, you always hear people say you can't play football scared or, you know, worried or, you know, kind of like 50%, because that's when you're going to get hurt or do something dangerous. So, but it'd be hard. You know, I wonder how long it'll take, even like the Bengals, who witnessed that happen, to kind of like shake it off and get that out of the back of their mind. But
absolutely. You know, I was reading different things. There was different viewpoints about how ESPN handled the situation and how the talent there handled it. I thought they did as good as anybody could ever do. You know, I thought Joe Buck and Aikman were good. I thought who was the on-field reporter?
Was it Salters?
Salters, yeah, Lisa Salters. Thought she was excellent, and then Susie in the studio with Booger and the other dude. I mean, what are they going to do? But I thought they handled it exactly how they should have. They weren't really doing a lot of speculating. I mean, I did some speculating. I was watching the game with my dad. Actually, he was. My dad loves news TV. Okay, he's hooked to like CNN and some other things. He quit watching the game. He says, "I'm going to go in bed and watch TV." I was at his house, and I'm out watching the game. And when that all happened, I jumped up and I had to go into his room and put the TV on ESPN. I said, "Dad, I think one of the players might have just died on the field here." You know, and then we watched it. We watched it for the next 45 minutes. It was just stunning. Have you guys ever seen anything like this at all? Do you have anything to relate to a similar situation that you have seen?
I remember the 97 Lions-Jets game that I know you obviously do too, Ted, where you know, the player got hurt and actually lost consciousness. They had to do CPR and bring him back to life.
Was that Reggie Brown? Is that his name?
Yep. Reggie Brown. I was young, obviously, but I remember watching it. We were at a family Christmas party, and obviously that was Barry Sanders. There were playoffs on the line, all that kind of stuff. It was Christmas. But other than that, no. I mean, like you said, Jared, we've seen a million injuries in basketball and football and whatever sport. Maybe hockey. I know we're not like huge hockey fans, but I remember, seeing clips of guys that get cut with a skate, stuff like that. Pretty scary.
There's one dude that took a puck right off the chest, and they had to do CPR on him on the ice.
Yeah, that was in a Red Wings game.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said about ESPN, the ESPN, how they handle it. I mean, one, I'll just say this: they had the best people in place for it. I mean, Scott Van Pelt at call, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Matt. You could probably speak to this better than I can, but and then obviously the in studio people as well. I mean, they did a great job. But that's exactly who I'd want in that situation if I was ESPN or a Fox or whoever. Would be that group of guys right there. And I'll just say that about Monday Night Football. I mean, what a big addition it was to get Buck and Aikman.
Oh, man,
we didn't make
no
too much
doubt.
of it when it happened, but I watch every Monday Night Football, and I didn't, almost subconsciously didn't even notice it. I turned it on pretty much because of them. Yeah. It's such a great broadcast. I love those two guys. It's just ESPN figured it out, and it sucks that they had this game they've been kind of highly anticipating all year, and something terrible like that happened.
Right? Yeah, they're top notch. I mean, Joe Buck catches a lot of flack, but I've said it before. He's one of my favorites. I love listening to him call baseball or football. But I think it's just one of those. I would have, because I work in TV, Jared, maybe you thought this too. I would have been curious to be in the control room while that all played out and just hear like the conversations of like, what do we do? Like, no, go back to the studio, let them talk. Go back to Joe and Troy, let them talk for a little bit. All right, let's go to commercial. You're just waiting for any news. And I think what you said, Ted, them not speculating, because if they would have started to say, you don't want to say it, I think he's dead out there. If they would have
I said as a fan.
Right. If they would have started to speculate on the air, they would have gotten ripped apart for all that kind of stuff. So, they just gave their thoughts and feelings. And, I think they handled it well. But
there's only one negative, and I don't know where it came from. I don't blame anybody at ESPN, but whoever came up with in Buck's ear that the team's just told they got 5 minutes to warm up.
I don't know. Who knows if the NFL, it wouldn't surprise me if the NFL just backtracked that. I don't think, Jared.
That's what I think.
Somebody told him, probably, I don't know who, somebody probably a power in the NFL told somebody that
nobody's come clean.
I don't think you can blame that on ESPN.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
It had to be somebody from the NFL office, right?
Yeah. Because if you remember when he said that, Joe Burrow was warming up. Like they cut to Joe Burrow with his helmet on throwing. So you do like someone, but then no one else was doing anything else. And then the
two coaches got together and they said, hey, we aren't playing this game.
It was wild. It was wild watching that play out. I stayed up for a while watching, and then obviously you want to know like what happened, but definitely a crazy scenario.
The one thing being an elder statesman, as I said earlier, I mean, it sent me right back to 1971 as a 15-year-old Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, and a player, Chuck Hughes, Lion wide receiver, actually died on the field late in the game, about a minute and a half to go in the game. He had a heart attack. He had a heart issue with an aneurysm, and he passed out and he died right there on the field. And then, again, a little bit more recent, but still before your guys' time, 1990, when Hank Gathers went down, for Loyola Marymount. But always a scary situation when it's something to do with the cardiac, for sure. And thank God everything turned out okay for DeVar Hamlin there. So, all right. I think we've covered about everything, haven't we?
I don't know what else we could get into at this point.
And I could talk about Michigan TCU, man, till the cows come home. So
I know it. I know it. Go TCU, though. I know you're saying Georgia, but I want the Horned Frogs to win one here.
Hope Baker Mayfield can pull out a win and the Lions can get that win at Lambeau. That's going to be a good game, though.
Oh, can't wait. So I'm going to take a nap this afternoon, maybe during the first game, and then I'll tune in for that 4:00 Seattle game.
Yeah.
All right, guys, good to get together with you both again. This has been the 3 Point Podcast presented by Memorial Healthcare, home of the Now Community Wellness Center, and also Skymint Cannabis. Don't forget at Memorial, join the 21-day health challenge. Just $1 to have an initiation fee and $2 a day after that. Less than $50 to be a participant in the 21-day health challenge. All kinds of activities involved there, and Check out any details with the new wellness center at memorialhealthcare.org/wellness-center. Also, our team includes Skymint Cannabis, Michigan's leader in the industry, over 15 locations throughout the state of Michigan. Check out the new Skymint Reserve. If you're over 21, go online at skymint.com, sign up for their great rewards program. And if you're in the Corunna Owosso area, check out the Corunna store. Coupon code 3.20 for 20% off Skymint products for any new customers. Just tell them you listen to 3 Point Podcast. That might work as well. Let all our great partners know you listen in and enjoy the program. They include AZEE Printing Solutions, Capital Sports Fieldhouse, Crow Real Estate and Auction, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, and Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. Make sure you give us a follow on social media at 3 Point Pod, and always looking for subscribers to our YouTube channel. On the radio coming up this week, our game of the week on Z92.5, Friday, January 13th, St. John's at Hazlitt. That'll about do it. Go Lions. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Thanks for listening.